Carlton right now feels like a club that is just beginning to unravel. Over the last couple of days, we've seen the fallout from Sam Docherty's comments and him being removed from a club function. Reports that the club has sounded out a different coach, a rival coach, whilst Michael Voss is still in the job. And a performance on the weekend where they conceded 12 goals in a single quarter and basically got wiped off the park at the SCG. And whilst all of those things in isolation could be a story of video for themselves, they've come basically at the exact same time, and we are here to talk about everything, including what is actually happening on the field, which I think is getting lost in this whole conversation. Because at the end of the day, all of these controversies and all of these stories come back to one thing: the performance on the field. Sam Docherty's comments don't happen unless Carlton collapsed on the field. Michael Voss wouldn't be getting potentially backstabbed, or Carlton wouldn't be searching for different coaches if the performance on the field wasn't collapsing. And they wouldn't have lost to Sydney if they didn't collapse. So what are we going to talk about today? All of those things, but most importantly, why are Carlton collapsing? But before we get into the vision, we have to speak about the context of this entire week that is unfolding at the Carlton Football Club, because it is unbelievable. Now, Sam Docherty has come out and he essentially said some things to his best mate, Dan Gorringe. If you don't know Dan Gorringe, Dan does footy, one of the biggest influencers in the footy media space at the moment, and an incredible person and a great guy, and I've worked with him for many years at this point, so I have the utmost respect for him. Now, he has come out and he's owned the mistake that he made, and he did make a mistake to a certain extent in the sense of airing a conversation that wasn't explicitly told that it could go to air, and I completely understand that. And to be perfectly clear, I'm not going to play Sam Docherty's initial comments because I don't use profanity on this channel, and it was a profanity laden sort of voice memo. So I'm not going to play it here. But the gist of the entire thing was just about how Carlton are collapsing in second halves, especially when the opposition matches them in contested possessions. Essentially saying that Carlton are great, Carlton are competitive, Carlton can win games if they can win and dominate contested possession. But as soon as the opposition wins that contested possession or halves contested possession or starts to win and hold their own in the contest, the rest of their system falls and the rest of their system fails. And that's what we're going to speak about today. So imagine Sam Docherty saying that. Club legend, former captain of the club, superstar. He said that with 15,000 more square words involved. But that's basically what he said. So let's just jump into the vision. So what are we actually looking for? We're looking for Carlton being able to win contests. So this is a perfect example. As soon as this ball hits the ground, it's genuine 50-50, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And off the back of Carlton winning ground level contests 3 times in a row, they're able to get their ball movement game going. And this is what we saw a lot in the first half. Carlton were actually able to transition the ball somewhat well after they won contests. Another perfect example here. So this ball was going to hit the deck, and Jagger Smith's ability here to be able to win ground level contest, get the ball out, and as soon as they were able to get the ball out, they were actually able to fracture a little bit of the Sydney defense and force Sydney to actually have to restructure the way that they were going, giving them time to actually make good decisions with ball in hand. That was great. The only issue is that after the first quarter, even though you were winning contest, you enter quarter time up 14-3, 2 goals 2 to 1 goal 2, and 2 of your goals, both of your scores, came from defensive mistakes, very easy defensive mistakes. We're talking about dropped chest marks, essentially, from the Sydney defense. It wasn't like Carlton were going inside forward 50 with any potency. Sydney just made horrible mistakes inside their defensive 50 that gifted Carlton 2 goals. So you dominated, but you didn't dominate the scoreboard. You didn't put any of that domination onto the scoreboard, which is an issue that we're going to cover later. And then Sydney gave them warning. So look at the work here from Tom Papley. So as soon as Carlton didn't start to win contest, they could not defend anyone. So look at this. We've got Florent versus Papley. Now, at this point of the game, Carlton are still well ahead in contested possessions, but this is when Sydney started to throw a few warning shots out there saying, hey, if we win contest, you're not going to be able to stop us on the outside. And Carlton should have got the warning that their system was going to fall over, because look at this matchup right now. And as soon as this ball hits the deck, and as soon as Sydney get their hands on the football here first with Chad Warner, who was the catalyst for a lot of Sydney's contest wins, look at how easily Tom Papley separates here from Ollie Florent. So Ollie Florent is running in absolutely no man's land. I mean, there is no position in which he's going to be able to get out and defend this, and there's no position in which he is going to be able to defend inside their defensive 50. He's legitimately in the perfect position of nowhere, of no man's land. He's in a black hole of absolutely nothing, of where he can't defend at the ball, he can't defend inside forward 50, and Papley gets an easy uncontested mark inside that forward 50. So that was the first warning shot that we saw of if Carlton start losing contested possession, their system is going to break down. Carlton, if you didn't get warned by that, this is the one that broke the game open. We're right at the end of the second quarter. Chad Warner beats 1, 2, 3 Carlton players. And again, as soon as he won that contested ball, we saw the Carlton system and structure just completely fall apart. And Sydney basically had players out the back everywhere. Now, Gordon probably should have marked that football, but Malcolm Rosas, goes back and kicks the goal anyway, because the Carlton system just could not defend the switch after Chad Warner had won that contest. So at halftime, Carlton are up 21 in contested possessions, but only 10 on the scoreboard. And we saw those warning shots that Sydney started to throw about the Carlton defensive system. So we got another. We're in the third quarter now. We're very early in the third quarter. Errol Gordon, slow play here. So Carlton's defensive structure, you should be set up. You should have even numbers, at the very least even numbers, especially even numbers standing next to some of the most dangerous forwards in the league, like, I don't know, Tom Papley potentially. Why is your system, why is your structure, why are your players allowing Tom Papley to roam around inside the forward 50 with this much space? And especially when he's against Lewis Young. The second part is Harry Dean, first gamer, understandable, but if you come and you commit to this contest here with Brodie Grundy in the air, you have to realize that you're leaving Justin McInerney at ground level by himself. So not only is Papley at ground level by himself, Justin McInerney is at ground level by himself. So Harry Dean, if you go here, you have to impact and you have to kill this ball. And I mean, get that thing outside of the 50 or take an intercepted mark. Because if you don't, this is what's going to happen. The ball hits the deck, soft drop to Papley, soft drop out to Justin McInerney, goal. That is the Carlton system inside the defensive 50, breaking down as soon as Papley was able to win that ground level contested ball. And this play has basically been seen everywhere. I used it a few times in my video last week. But again, we're talking about different types of contested possessions here. So here's another view of it. So firstly, contested possession is just a simple clearance here from Errol Gordon. But again, as soon as Carlton lose that contested possession, the system and the structure just completely falls apart. So firstly, focus on Walsh versus Gordon, because Walsh, this is now your man. You're the only one at Carlton who's got any chance to be able to run with Errol Gordon, and you're standing next to him. You were just tackling him. He is now your problem until you get the ball back. Secondly, Adam Saad, your system and structure should not be Adam Saad going third man up in a contest to try and take an intercept mark. I don't know how many intercept marks Adam Saad is taking, but it can't be a whole lot, because why are you going third man up when contested possession is your biggest issue? If you don't win it, you are going to lose. So why are you going up trying to make a contest or trying to win this ground ball when you know as soon as that hits the deck, your player is going to be the one at ground level standing by himself winning that contested possession? And then they just get over the top. McGovern leaves McInerney to come up and pressure Gordon. McInerney is now free over the back of that contest because Sydney just won those contested possessions because the Carlton's defensive structure fell apart. And to be fair, sometimes it's not even about contested possession, because they lost everywhere else along the field, because this is a completely uncontested play, but it does show a really good example of why Carlton's defensive system just looks like it completely fell apart. So Errol Gordon here starting at full back, instantly mismatch between these two. So Errol Gordon is going to get this ball back in every situation because he's got Harry Mackay in him. Harry Mackay is not going to chase him, and even if he tries, he's not going to catch him. So Errol Gordon is always going to get this ball back. So if you're these players at the back of this contest here, you have to understand, you're staring at him, that he's going to get this handball back. So why would you be coming up at the football? Why are you coming up at the football when you've got Nick Blakey ready to go out the back of you, because as soon as Nick Blakey realizes, hey, Errol Goulden's going to get this football, he is going to run directly towards goal. So why are you guys coming here? You have no chance of getting to the frontal pressure of Errol Goulden. So the next best thing you have to do is cover Errol Goulden's exit kicks. You have to cover the exit kicks, because you cannot be caught in no man's land. And that's where Carlton were caught so often. So they don't get close enough to put any frontal pressure on Errol Goulden, but they leave Nick Blakey out the back standing by himself. The amount of times Carlton got caught in no man's land because their system and their structure was just absolutely nowhere was kind of astounding. And so after all of that vision, it obviously culminated in a horrible loss to Sydney, and they gave up 12 goals in the third quarter and blah, 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 blah. But what I think is most fascinating is the fact that Carlton were plus 21 in contested possessions at halftime, which sounds great. Sounds great. Sydney, though, in the third quarter, went plus 10 and piled on 12 goals. Carlton were plus 21, and at the end of halftime, they were up by 10 points. So they won contested possession by 21 at halftime. They were up 10 points. Sydney won contested possession by 10 in a quarter and kicked 12 goals. That is the difference here. That's the issue with Carlton, and it bears fruit across the rest of the game. So we look at, I have to read the notes here, but we look at Gold Coast won contested possessions by 11 against Geelong. And what I'm going to use here is the metric of inside 50s, because that's just giving your forwards a chance. Can you win contested possession, and does that result in your ability to actually give your forwards a chance? So Gold Coast win contested possession. They beat Geelong by 11 in that statistic. They had 71 inside 50s. They beat Geelong in the inside 50 count by 21 inside 50s. So they won contested possession by 11 and had 21 more inside 50s. GWS won contested possession by 11 as well, and they had 5 more inside 50s than Hawthorn. Brisbane beat the Western Bulldogs by 17 contested possessions, and they had 13 more inside 50s than them. St Kilda beat Collingwood by 15 in contested possessions, and they had 23 more inside 50s. Whereas Carlton beat Sydney by 17 contested possessions and lost the inside 50 count by 17. That is the difference here. That is an absolutely damning stat, because all of the teams that won contested possession dominated inside 50s. They all won the inside 50 count. Now, that doesn't say anything about if they won the game or not, because obviously Brisbane did not win and St Kilda did not win, but both of them completely dominated inside 50s in those games. So contested possessions to them allowed them to actually not only win the contest, but gave them first hands on the ball to go inside forward 50 and give themselves a chance. Whereas Carlton got first hands on the football and still did not convert inside forward 50. And that is system, and that is game plan, and that is structure. Now that we get past the vision, we've got to talk about the controversies, because I am just astounded by this entire situation. And you won't meet a bigger Carlton believer this year than me. I mean, I've made videos on videos on videos about how I think they're going to be better, and they just come out in the first week and not only lose on the field, but they completely lost off the field. I mean, it's been 2 days, it's Tuesday, we're 2 days into the week, and they've already lost on the field. It's ridiculous. So let's get into that. Now we get to the more off-field controversies, and I don't want this channel to become, news headlines and become that old media, but I do think that there has to be a discussion around all of these things, and especially from Carlton fans out there. So Sam Docherty has been removed, reportedly, or now confirmed, from a pre-match function that was supposed to go ahead of their round 1 clash with the Richmond Football Club. And he was also being removed all the way up until round 6 when Carlton play in their Peter McCullum game, which obviously raises money for cancer, which is obviously near and dear not only to Sam Docherty's heart, but he's also on the board of that charity, that foundation. What does this say about your football club, that you cannot handle this sort of criticism from a player or a former player, a current legend of the club, a former captain, a former leader, that you can't handle this when the rest of the media has continually bashed you for years, but it's only a bad thing when a former player comes out and does it. And that doesn't make sense to me. But also, this is what the fans are feeling. This is what the fans want to hear. They don't want to hear Michael Voss come to another press conference and say, hey, we're working on things. Hey, we're looking at this. Hey, we understand the problem. Well, what is the problem? Because Carlton fans have known this and Carlton fans have speculated this for years now, and we haven't got a clear answer from anyone at the club about what the actual problems are in this game plan. What is the actual problem about the way that Carlton plays from the perspective of the club? Do they understand what their issues are? And clearly, inside the club, they do understand what their issues are. They just cannot seem to fix it. And that is a viewpoint that we haven't had. So if you're the Carlton Football Club, if you cannot handle that specific criticism, which is very valid, obviously, clearly to the entire AFL world, is extremely valid criticism and something that Sam Docherty said on air with his radio commitments at 3AW minus the profanity, the same sentiment, then what are we talking about here? How can we take you as a serious football club if you cannot handle criticism? And to be fair, I can slightly understand potentially not having him in the pre-match function on heading up to round one in a way, because does then that become the story of this pre-match function instead of the launching of the season? Potentially. But all the way up until round 6 or round 7 or whatever it is, 5 or 6 weeks off, you're essentially banning someone from the club who clearly has a lot of love for the club, has a lot of respect for the club, and has a lot of care for the club. Because if he didn't care, then he wouldn't be so upset with the direction of the club. And that's different. But the next thing, and this sort of just leads into it, because on that hand, like in that argument, I'm sort of going against Michael Voss, and Carlton are, I guess, in a certain extent, backing up Michael Voss, saying, hey, we believe in this game plan, or we believe in Vossi and his direction and his opinion, and we believe so strongly in that we're going to back our people in to the point where we're going to exclude one of our club legends. That's the stance on one hand. That's the stance on this issue, on this issue. On that isolated issue is the club backing in the club and the people in its club and the players and the coaching staff and everything. And then on the complete other side of the spectrum, we just saw a story that completely contradicts that. We saw a story that completely is the opposite to that sentiment that the club was trying to portray. Because we heard a while ago now that Sam McClure reported that last year the Carlton Football Club had reportedly approached a Carlton rival club head coach to coach the club. Sam McClure reported that on Footy Classified. Now, he refused to drop the name, and he basically just said that he refused to drop the name because he didn't feel like it was relevant, in the sense that he didn't think that the coach who was approached would entertain the offer, and he didn't want to drag him into a story that he basically had nothing to do with. Instead, he was just a person who was approached. He didn't entertain it at all. So I thought that was great by Sam McClure to not drop the name. But Tom Morris came back from his football-speaking ban on SEN Fireball last week with Kane and David King, Kane Corns and David King, and he just dropped the name. He just said it was Craig McRae. It was head coach of the Collingwood Football Club, the biggest arch rival of the Carlton Football Club, and best mate of Michael Voss, by the way, Craig McRae. Premiership teammates, best mates, still catch up all of the time, talk about wine, drinking wine together and all those sorts of things. He just completely dropped the name to Tom Morris. And then last night on the agenda setters, we saw Caroline Wilson has been probably the one that's come out and been strongest about it, just asserting that this absolutely happened. Not a huge amount of details other than the fact that it did happen. Now, I will have to say, and I do have to say, Graham Wright, the CEO, president of the Carlton Football Club, has come out and denied this report. So Carlton is saying that, or Graham Wright is saying that he did not approach Craig McRae, and the entire media is saying, well, we know it happened. So I'm going to believe the media for the most part. But this story, like I said, just contradicts everything that they're doing in the Sam Docherty story. Because in the Sam Docherty story, they're backing in the club, they're backing in their people, their culture, everything. And then on the other hand, 6 months ago, they were trying to get rid of their coach behind his back. Because publicly they were saying, we believe in Michael Voss, we're going to extend him. They signed him to an extension. We believe in him. He's our coach. He's going to coach through 2026. Meanwhile, in the background, they were trying to replace him. What are we talking about here? So one thing, you're backing in your people, and on the other hand, you would have ousted your person, ousted your coach behind his back if Craig McRae had have said yes. These are two very contradictory stances from the Carlton Football Club. But there's just too much. There's too much going on here. It's kind of ridiculous. So anyway, feel free to give me all of your opinions down in the comments below. And there's a new video coming out tomorrow, and there's always a new video coming out. And also, in the description down below is a Substack article that I wrote. I make a lot of videos, but I've never written an article. So I decided I would write an article, and it is about the evolution of the modern midfielder and why the centre bounce rule is so important to the changing nature that we look at AFL midfielders. It's free. You can just go and read it. It's just a nice article, I think. You can just go read it and give me lots of feedback. That's all. Please feel free to stick around and subscribe. Send this to a Carlton fan or a footy fan, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.